Interviewing can be stressful and anxiety-provoking. I have helped a lot of people in the recent weeks with their interview preparation. And I thought it might be helpful to put together a quick video to help you calm your nerves before your next upcoming interview. Hey, I'm Abby and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today I'm going to share with you two parts in this video. Before the interview, so what sorts of things can you do to help calm your nerves before the interview actually begins? And then also some tips of what you can do during an interview to calm your nerves. Before we jump into that, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you're looking forward to learning those tips. And if you haven't already, please remember to go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life, work, balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. So let's talk first about what you can do to calm your nerves before the actual interview begins. So these tips will likely take place at least the day before your interview, if not several days or weeks before your interview. First, consider the type of interview that you have been invited for. Is this going to be a phone interview? Is this going to be an in-person interview? Is this going to be a video or virtual interview? Is this going to be a pre-recorded interview through a platform like HireVue? You also want to consider the length of the interview. So has this been scheduled for 10 to 15 minutes? Or has this been scheduled for a little bit longer, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, or even several hours? Those two aspects, the type of interview and the length of the interview, will help you narrow down what type of interview you can likely expect for this upcoming interview. So when I say what type of interview you can expect, that's either more of a cultural fit interview or more of a technical interview. I have found in my experience that the shorter interviews are more likely to be a culture fit interview. So these are interviews where the interviewer is getting to know you more as a person to determine how you'll fit within the role, the team, the department, and the overall organization. Longer interviews, while they might still have a cultural aspect to it, are usually a little bit more technical focused. They might be asking you to solve specific problems. They might be asking you how you might approach a certain situation. So it might be more of a cultural interview, or it might be more of a cultural and technical mix of an interview. Longer interviews might also include assessments of skills and knowledge. So they might have some homework for you to do before your interview, and they might review it and ask you to explain your reasoning. They might also have actual in-the-moment assessments to assess your skills with certain programs or platforms. So, shorter interviews are likely only going to be assessing your culture fit for the role, the organization, the team, etc. Longer interviews might still do some of those culture fit questions and culture fit assessments, but they also might bleed into more of that technical aspect. So once you've determined the likely type of interview that you will engage in during this next scheduled interview, then you can really focus how you do your preparation. You will want to review very common interview questions. I've got a video on the 5 different types of questions you can likely expect during your interview. And you'll want to come up with your responses to, at minimum, these 3 different types of questions. The tell me about yourself question, or the introduction question, which, again, in my experience, every single interview I've been a part of or I've consulted on has started off with the question, tell me about yourself, or tell me a little bit about yourself and why you applied to this position. I, again, have several videos on how to answer this question, so if you haven't watched those, I've linked to them in the description box below, and I've also put a card up above. The other type of question that you will want to prepare to answer are common behavior-based interview questions, or situation-based interview questions. These types of questions are very common in every interview, regardless of the type. Cultural interviews and even technical interviews. These are questions about how you behave in certain situations. Again, I have several videos on how to answer these types of questions, and I even explain the common formulas or acronyms associated with answering these types of questions. So again, if you haven't checked those out, I've linked to them in the description box below, and I put a card for my playlist up above. These types of behavior-based questions or situational-based questions are always going to be answered with the STAR, or my preference, the CAR method. You will want to review the different types of questions you can expect that are going to be behavior-based And go back into your mental file cabinet and determine different situations or behaviors that you've engaged in that had successful positive outcomes that you'll be able to use to answer any different type of behavioral question. And finally, the last question you should absolutely prepare to answer during any interview is the question, do you have any questions for us? Now, my most popular YouTube video at this moment is a video about the 3 different types of questions you should ask at the end of an interview. So if you haven't watched that yet, please check it out. I have a full playlist on the different types of questions that you can ask at the end of interviews, whether they're internal interviews, external interviews, first interviews, second interviews, etc. So I highly recommend checking out those videos. Again, I've linked to the playlist in the description box below. I put a card up above. So please make sure that you check those out because you must have at least 3 questions prepared to ask at the end of every interview. So those are the 3 types of questions that you should at least be prepared to answer during every interview. Tell me about yourself or an introduction, behavior-based questions, and the question, do you have any questions for us? Once you've thought about those common interview questions that you might encounter during this upcoming interview, it's also time to do a little bit more research. So pull up that job description, pull up that job posting that you applied to, and review the actual job that you applied to and that you'll be interviewing for. I also highly recommend that you review your application materials. So your resume, your cover letter, any supplemental questions that you had to answer as a part of the application process. This will really refresh your memory on how you presented yourself in this job application so that you can make sure you do it in a consistent way during the interview as well. You will also want to take some time to review or research the team, the department, or the organization. So this likely is just an easy Google search or click on the company URL in the person who's requested this interview's signature block so that you can bring up the company's website and do some research on the organization, on the specific department, and even maybe the team. Look at their website, specifically focus your attention on the About Us page, where you will likely find information about their mission, their vision, and their values. You can start to pull some of those keywords and phrases and think of ways that you align with this organization so you can drop that into conversation during the interview. You may also want to look up different challenges or problems that this organization is facing or that they are attempting to solve. You'll want to be knowledgeable on what the organization does and what you will be doing in this role that you applied to. And finally, the last thing I recommend doing when it comes to your preparation before the interview is prepare your notes for the interview. I have a video all about if you can bring notes to the interview, and I'll give you a quick spoiler. The answer is yes, you can bring notes to any interview. If you want more information about that, check out my video. I've linked to it in the description box below, and I've put a card up above. But you will want to make sure that you have notes ready for the interview. The types of things that I recommend listing at minimum on your note page is the STAR or the CAR acronym so that it refreshes your memory so that you answer any behavioral-based or situation-based questions using that acronym. You can also jot down some notes or reminders of different situations that you could use to answer those types of situational or behavior-based questions. And then finally, at minimum, write down your 3 questions that you're going to ask at the end of an interview. If you have other information that you'd like to write down, feel free to jot it down. You may want to note or highlight some experiences or accomplishments that you want to bring up during the interview process. And by writing it down on your notepad, there's no way that you will forget to bring it up during the interview process. Now, I offer a limited number of interview strategy sessions each week. So if you are in a place where you are looking to prepare for an upcoming interview and you would like to do an interview strategy session with me where we talk through the different types of questions you can expect during an interview, how you might actually answer for yourself specific interview questions, tips and tricks on how you can have a successful interview, please feel free to reach out to me. I've linked to my website and I've put my email in the description box below. Please reach out to me if you are interested in scheduling that interview strategy session. This is definitely an area where I can help you. You probably only need a single session with me to feel prepared going into your interview. This is different from a mock interview. It is purely an interview strategy session. So now let's talk about the different tips or techniques that you can use to calm yourself during the actual interview. You may have done all of the preparation work and feel great going into the interview. And then you actually get into the hot seat and you black out. You forget all of the things that you prepared before this actual interview. So what are some things that you can do to center and refocus yourself? Well, the first is to think about your mindset. When it comes to feeling nervous or excited, your body is experiencing the exact same physiological response. So your body is reacting the same way to something that is exciting and something that is nervous. If you interpret that physiological response as excitement rather than nervousness, your confidence will likely go up and your ability to focus and think about how your body is preparing you to meet this challenge or this obstacle will help you overcome those feelings of anxiety and worry. So consider your mindset during the moment. You might be nervous, you might have anxiety, and it is a lot easier said than done to just say switch your mindset. However, if you recognize that you're feeling nervous, try reframing that to yourself in the moment, saying, I'm not nervous, I'm excited for this opportunity. Just that simple change in language can really change the way that your brain is interpreting the signals that your body is giving it. So mindset is a huge part about this anxiety or nervousness associated with interviewing. The other thing to remember when it comes to mindset is that you are also interviewing them. You are interviewing the hiring team, you are interviewing your potential manager, you're interviewing people who you could potentially work with during this process. It is just as important for them to get to know you and decide if you're going to be a right fit for the organization or the role as it is for you to interview them and determine if they're going to be the right fit for you. So think of it as a two-way conversation rather than all of this attention being focused on you. If you can think of it more as this conversation, that will really help ease some of that anxiety and nervousness. During your interview, it's also really easy to forget to breathe. So maybe you take your notepad and you write at the top of it, breathe in big capital letters. This will remind you to take a breath. That will also help you slow down. When we're nervous, when we're anxious, we tend to speed up our conversation and speed up our words. You want to slow down, be fully present in the moment, and be cool, calm, and collected. So you need to remind yourself to breathe and remind yourself to slow down. And finally, my very last tip or technique for you is something that you can physically do during your interview that will help refocus and center yourself during this process. And this is a pressure point technique that I like to share. So you have a pressure point in your hand, either hand, between your thumb and your forefinger. And this is an area that you can press and use to release some of that anxiety, that nervousness, and recenter and refocus yourself. So practice it right now as you're watching this video. Squeeze in this part of your hand just lightly. You can do it anywhere. You can hold your hands up. You can have your hands in your lap. Just squeezing that little pressure point can really focus and center you during the interview process. The great thing about this pressure point is that you can hide it if you need to trigger it. So if you're sitting in person in an interview, you can have your hands in your lap, under the table, hidden, squeezing that pressure point. If you're on video, you can have your hands out of the picture, squeezing that pressure point. So I highly recommend using that pressure point in any given situation where there might be levels of anxiety or worry, not just interviews. So earlier I talked about the interview strategy sessions that I offer. I also offer mock interview sessions. So again, this is a 45-minute session. We will spend about 15 to 30 minutes doing a mock interview that will be recorded. You will be able to have access to that recording after we meet, and you will be able to watch yourself back during the interview process. Watching yourself and listening to yourself is a great way to gather data about how you show up during an interview. After that mock interview portion, we will have 15 minutes or more where I will be able to provide you feedback on how you showed up during the interview. I will provide you feedback on your eye contact, your body language, your tone of voice, how quickly you were talking, if you need to breathe or maybe use that pressure point technique. I'll also provide you feedback on your answers to certain interview questions. So if you're looking for more of that detailed feedback about how you actually show up during an interview, reach out to me. Again, I put my contact information in the description box below. Feel free to reach out to me to schedule a mock interview session. Now, as I mentioned before, I have limited sessions on a weekly basis, so please reach out to me as soon as you know you might need help in this area. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please remember to go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas, please put your experiences and those questions in the comments box below. I love receiving comments. I do my best to respond to each comment individually, and your experience sharing will really help others who are going through the same interview prep process. So please, again, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas, put them in the comments box below. And as usual, please go ahead and remember to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can continue to receive life-work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.